Welcome to part 2 of Competency 18. In this video, we will work with learning styles and instruction. Number 1, a math teacher gives students an activity that uses algebra tiles to investigate the number of terms in polynomials and operations with polynomials. Which learning styles would have optimal benefit from this activity? Okay, the minute we put in algebra tiles, we had the hands-on element, and that would be your kinesthetic. So that tells me that B and C are what we need, or possibly D, but that eliminates option A. Okay. And then let's see, investigate the number of tiles. Okay. You would think, all right, they're just giving them an activity and they've got the algebra tiles, so it has to be hands on only. Not true. Well, one thing that we know is there's no auditory element. The teacher is not giving instructions, the students are not working with the the educator, or they do not have a group situation mentioned where someone in the group is reading instructions and then they're reading them, or one person is telling them. So this is not that kind of activity, so that gets rid of B, the auditory. Now, it is between C and D. And you may say, well, there's no visual. Yes, there is. The minute you have algebra tiles, the student is creating a visual for themselves. They may have instructions somewhere, or they may know how to do this, and they're working with them to set something up in maybe a prior knowledge. Or there may be images that they go with that show them how to do it. But the fact that there are algebra tiles being placed by the student creates their own visual. So option D would have to be it. Okay, so have that in mind every time you have a hands-on situation. When there's a hands-on situation, the student is creating their visual. All right, so let's look at number 2. A middle school math teacher provides each student with a detailed step-by-step instruction for solving a quadratic equation, which includes written explanations of each step and graph of the function. Which learning style or styles would have optimal benefit from this activity? Okay. All right, the minute they said written explanations, okay, that means the student is going to have to read them, okay? Maybe they're not writing something themselves, but they will be reading. So you must have the reading, writing element there, okay? And of course, there is visual. Where is there visual? The graph that shows what's happening, okay? Because the graph is placed, that is our visual. So there is nothing mentioned in the problem, or the question rather, with the students hearing or talking. And there's more than just, there is no hands-on. There was no hands-on mentioned. So this would get rid of C and D and B because there is no hands-on. So really all we really had was A in the beginning. Okay, so let's look at number 3. A math teacher demonstrates an initial geometry activity as the students work along with him. That is going to be auditory. They are working with the teacher and listening to the teacher, not just watching what the teacher does. Okay. So this is going to have to be an auditory element. Okay. So I'm going to say option A, not B, there's no auditory. C, there is auditory. And D, there is auditory. But let's keep reading. The activity requires the students to select a triangle tile and use the tile to show a variety of transformations after drawing and labeling an original triangle on graph paper. Okay, I know what they mean here. All right, so what they mean is that they've got some in this this is available. It can be made. I mean, rather it has been made and I've had it as an educator. You have these tiles that go or come, they're made for specific graph paper. And you can also print out graph paper for this. They'll put their little triangle on the graph paper and they'll label it A, B, C. And then as they move it, they would have A prime, B prime, C prime, and then double prime, triple prime. Okay, if you've taught, you know what that is. Okay, so that's what they're describing here. So what we have is a hands-on element the minute that the tile was involved. So we have that hands-on. Okay, you're going to have a visual element because they're creating their visual, and the educator is modeling the visual. So, therefore, you have to mark out C because it doesn't have that nice visual element. Now we're between A and D. Is there reading and writing? Well, you might want to argue that the students' labeling is the writing, but it isn't. That's just simply creating a visual. So, really, there wasn't what you had in that prior question. There was a given explanations. No, the explanations are now being auditory from the educator. It could have been added if they had said that the teacher was reading for them something in front of them, or they were writing their full explanations on their own as they drew, but that is not happening. That'd be a pretty big activity too. Maybe for me, and the fact that it says right here, initial geometry activity, mm, we're at the first. They're not ready for all that writing yet. They'll gain the expertise for that, but not right now. So I would say A would be our best bet in this situation. I'm going to get rid of these so you can compare. Okay. All right, let's go to number 4. Number 4, Mrs. Robles gives her students a group activity that requires the students to classify a set of various triangles. Okay, we have scalene, isosceles, equilateral, right, acute, obtuse. Okay, I recognize this kind of activity. Right, so then it says each group of 4 students will need to write each classification and rationale for their classification. So they're going to have to classify them and say why they classified them. Then the group must give a group presentation of their rationale of their classifications, which learning styles would have optimal benefit from this activity. Okay, we have reading, writing, auditory, and then your hands-on kinesthetic. And then D says all of the above. Oh, absolutely all of the above. Okay, let's think about this. It says they're given a set of various triangles that go in the group. So they're given this set. So immediately you have got the hands on in front of them. So they're going to move them around and classify them. So they have things in their hands. Then they're going to have to listen to each other. They're going to have to talk to each other. And then they are going to have to write what to do. And then they're going to be verbally, I mean, there's a lot going on there. Now, of course, this kind of activity is not an initial activity. So there's a whole lot more. You have all of that. We don't even have visual. They have a visual. They are going to create their visual by classifying. Okay, well, maybe not so much. it does have visual elements, but I would, unless they added in that they were creating a poster. Now, if they created a poster with their classifications, then yes, I would say, and of course, the teacher probably is smart enough to give different colors and things to the students with this. But if they had like some kind of a poster, I would agree with the visual. But yes, I do agree. You have at least these three. Okay, enough of that. Let's go on to number 5. Okay. Which of the following types of lessons would be most beneficial for a student who is an auditory learner? Okay, for this question, they're just seeing if you know what that means. Okay, do you know what that means? Well, that is speaking, listening kind of thing. Okay, all right. So, A, listening to the teacher lecture on finding the volume of a cube. Well, there's more than just if they're lecturing correctly, there's also other elements in there. So, of course, because it says auditory and we're listening, I'm going to go with A, but I'm going to keep reading to make sure. And the reason I'm jumping to it so soon is they're giving us a whole lot of detail here in these explanations. Now, be logical and let's think about this. If this were the real test, I think they'd have a little more detail and make this a little more to it and ask you a little more. They might say auditory and visual and then add more to the activities, okay? All right, so let's look at B. That says reading an activity sheet that explains how to solve linear equations. No, they're just reading. There's no listening or talking. Let's see. C, watching a video of a ball being tossed. Okay. Yes, there probably is that auditory element, but the truth is there's more of a visual element here. So it would not be the best benefit for the student. Okay. Now, if you had auditory and visual and the video was described as or rather the video they said, hey, this video the student will have to listen and watch to each da da da. We don't know what that video is, so I would say that video is not the best benefit. This video could have very little to listen to and only have shapes moving around, which I've come across. So they're not telling you enough about the video. And they're saying watch an animation of a graph that relates to the distance a ball is traveling. So they're really just watching an animation. They're not listening to what's happening. Okay, it's very specific on that. Now let's look at D. Using pattern blocks to explore fractional relationships, of course, that's a hands on. Okay. And I hope you understand the difference between A and C. C, because they're saying that they're watching an animation and they're not watching and listening to a person say, blah, like when the teacher's describing. So, really, A is better, even though it says lecture, because it says finding the volume of a cube. So I would hope in this lecture there's more to it, but there's more listening than there is other things, I'm sure. Okay? All right. Probably not the best teaching method either. I would have added a lot of bells and whistles. I would have had, for me, I would add all kinds of bright colors, make sure that my images had good detail, step by step. There might be some reading things in there, and I would also make sure the kids were working with me, not just sitting there listening. But that's all we have to go by. So we're going to have to say option A. Okay, this is the last question in this video, and I wanted to thank you guys for watching again. You're amazing. Also, thank you for subscribing and sharing. Subscribing is amazing. Sharing, let somebody else know about the videos. It may actually help those other people that you know. Okay, guys. And again, I'm going to wish everybody happy testing.